Hi everybody, and welcome to Turning Readers into Writers. This week's episode is all about why being a stay-at-home mum can actually be a real catalyst for transition for you in both your personal and your professional life. It comes at a particularly relevant time, I think, because we're in the middle of lockdown and COVID-19, and I am sure there has been a lot of people thinking about how their future is going to pan out and any significant changes they might want to make for their future. So listen to the episode, it might just inspire you to take some positive action for your own future. Welcome to the Turning Readers into Writers podcast, where I teach beginner writers how to find the time and confidence to write their first novel. I'm your host, Emma Desi, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for joining me today, because if you've been longing to write your novel for forever, this is the place to be. Have you been wanting to start writing your first novel but have been feeling uncertain about how to get started? Well, I have a simple resource for you called The 3 Easy Steps to Start Writing Your Novel. This simple cheat sheet will help you begin your writing journey by resolving that perennial problem of how to find the time to actually write. The answer is super simple and super actionable. And if you wanted to, you can get started today. So go to emmadesi.com/3 easy steps and start writing today. So as I mentioned in the introduction, this is a difficult time for a lot of us because we're in the midst of COVID-19. There's lots of people being stuck at home under lockdown, increasingly being told they can't go out. In the UK, even our 1 hour a day exercise, that looks like it's going to be revoked because not enough people are taking the rules seriously. I know in other places around the world as well that a lot of people are losing their jobs unexpectedly, and of course that is causing a great deal of concern for people, and it'll be making people have a think about what their future brings. But this idea of transitioning, of changing our futures, of thinking about what's coming up, it's not just for when you're in a time of dire straits, it can also be for when you're in a period of calm as well, or relative calm. And I wanted to talk today about why being a stay-at-home mum, that can also be a real time for transition, a real time for thinking about your future. It can often be the catalyst that takes you into a new career. So in my own life, I know of women who have become stay-at-home mums and then gone on to pursue higher education, whether it be to do their first degree or whether it be to do a doctorate. And as a result of that, they've ended up doing things they never thought they would. So they've perhaps opened their own business, or they have become lecturers, professors, teaching people, again, things they didn't think that they would ever do. But it's having that time at home, being a stay-at-home mum, that's given them that time for thought, for contemplation, for thinking about, okay, what's next? What's going to happen in the next half of my life? So it's not just, being a stay-at-home mum is not just a transition from moving from the corporate life into the domestic life. So you may have gone from being in charge of a big team of people, that you're regularly holding meetings, perhaps you work in sales, perhaps you are a nurse or a teacher and you've been involved with other people, caring for other people, negotiating with other people, collaborating with other people. You've been out in the world making a difference. And then stay-at-home motherhood comes and everything revolves around the home, and it can feel like quite a closed environment. Your world kind of shrinks quite a lot and it becomes all about nap times, feeding times, snack times, sleeping times, nursery times, all the different toddler activities that we send our kids to when they're growing up. So your life becomes a lot smaller. The conversations often revolve around nappies and burping and toys that are suitable for different ages, classes that your kids are doing when they're moving on to solid foods. Are they coming out of nappies and being toilet trained? All those little stages of our young people's lives. So your world can shrink quite a lot, and the conversations that you have can become quite inane. So you might go from making strategic global plans for the financial company you work for to negotiating the bickering that goes on between your kids. So trying to think what we had, what in the car, for example, my kids often argue about who's allowed to look out of which window. One of them will say, you can't look out this window, that's my window. And so the argument continues. And whilst you may love being a stay-at-home parent, that it gives you a lot of enjoyment, a lot of satisfaction. It gives you this pleasure that you didn't know you would have when you had kids. It really fulfills a lot for you. There is also perhaps a part of you that wants something else. Maybe not right now, but at some stage in the future, you know you're going to want something else for yourself. But that doesn't necessarily mean going back to the job that you had. You've made a lot of changes in your life, and perhaps you want those changes to continue when you move back out of the home again. And one of those things, well, certainly was for me, was to write a book. Might not be that for you, it might be something else that you've always wanted to do. But I want to suggest that being a stay-at-home mum is just the right time. It can be just the catalyst that you need to make a change in your life. So for example, you're already out of the rat race. So you've already made that difficult decision to, if not put an end to your career, you've certainly decided to take a break from your career. And the security that comes with having that daily routine, the financial security that comes with having a regular salary or wage, that's gone, and that can be really, really frightening. But once you've made it, once you've taken that step away from your old life, a whole new raft of possibilities will open up for you if you look for them. So, for example, when I talk to friends who have been working hard on their career for the last 20, 25 years, it's almost impossible for them now to imagine making such a big pivot in their life into pursuing something new, something unexpected. But if you're a stay-at-home mum, you've made that initial physical and mental upheaval that's brought on by this tiny person entering your life. It's going to leave you floored for quite a few months, maybe even a few years, as it did for me. But you've made that shift already, that really difficult shift. You've forgone the professional work that used to give you a sense of identity and a sense of independence. And now you're forging this new identity as a 24-hour parent. So what else could you forge once your kids have grown up a little bit more? So you've made that big decision, you're out the rat race. The second thing to think about is the fact that you have learned some new skills. So I gave that example of, perhaps in your old life, you were the global head of something or other in a big financial firm, and you were making strategic decisions for a whole department. Well, as a full-time mother, you've undoubtedly learned some new skills or have deepened the skills that you already have. Because even if you were a nursery or a primary school teacher, you have probably not had to deal with the daily tantrums and the huge egos of your own toddlers, who are impossible to deal with and whose whim literally changes with the wind. Because as we all know, our children behave one way whilst they're in a public space, whilst they're with their teachers. They behave very differently when they're at home and they feel safe and they feel that they can freely express themselves. And even the most difficult of adult colleagues, they're not going to express themselves quite so vocally or as freely as your preschooler. So as such, you've learnt this whole raft of new skills. So your time management has been tested and improved. Your cooking skills and your menu offerings, they've had to be revamped. And you're also learning things about your own body and your child's body that you just didn't know were possible. You didn't know that it was possible to swallow the things that your children have swallowed. You didn't know it was possible to poo something, the colour that comes out of your child's bottom. All these little things. You didn't know that your body was able to be pushed to the ultimate of exhaustion and still carry on. So your abilities to negotiate have improved. You have set boundaries for your children perhaps, and you've had to learn how to hold your ground, because as we know, children can be very, very persuasive. They can be very persuasive, and they're very consistent in what they want, and they don't give up. They do not easily take no for an answer. So the lack of sleep and the level of patience you've shown your child has made you dig deeper than you've ever had to do before. And you find that you're capable of more than you thought. And you have an iron will to match even the toughest of the tough. So you've learned that, wow, you're impressed with what you can do in a 24-hour period. So there's some new skills you've got there. The third thing I'd like to sort of think about is how being a stay-at-home mum can really be a time of reflection. So if you were like me, for example, you've gone from being this dynamic career woman, but now you've gone to being a domestic slave. And it can be a complicated transition because you've gone from independence, you were spontaneous and sociable, you had friends and you went to the theatre and you went out for dinner and on a whim you might go away for the weekend. But now your life revolves around one or two small people, maybe more, who are thoroughly routine bound. Their life dominates you. in everything that you do, and they can't even speak yet sometimes. So much as you love your child and you wouldn't want things any other way, it still can be a really tough adjustment. And you've needed to do some necessary reflection about who you are, where your place is in life, and what you want going forward. I mean, certainly that was the case for myself. So back in 2010, 2011, within a 12-month period of time, I emigrated to the other side of the world, I got married, and I had a baby. Oh my goodness, my world was turned upside down in a way that I never would have predicted. And so when my hormones began to settle down and I started to get a little bit more sleep maybe, I began to think about my future and what was important to me. So for example, I knew I did not want to go back to a 9 to 5. I really enjoyed the freedom that came with being my own boss. I say my own boss, I still had a toddler or two to wrangle with, so strictly speaking, they were the boss. But I don't mind admitting that I did feel overwhelmed at the prospect of going back to a full-time job and also being a full-time parent. That really did overwhelm me, and I wasn't sure that I either had it in me or that I wanted it. So if that sounds familiar to you, you might find yourself, in quieter moments, just giving a bit of reflection on what it is that you want for the second half of your life that's coming up. And it can take time to figure out. You are busy, you've still got all these kids. It certainly took me a few years to figure out what I wanted. But if you kind of start thinking about it and what this next chapter of your life is going to bring, well, as Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable. Because remember, your children won't be little for forever. And at some stage, you're going to want something for yourself that's not about the home, it's not about the kids, it's not about your partner, it's something for you. And this might be the time for you to just start thinking about that. Not in any real serious way, but have it there in the back of your brain. You're giving it some thought. It's also a time to rediscover old loves, because as the kids get older and we all settle into routines and everything becomes a little bit more stable, you can find yourself wanting to pick up old hobbies and activities that you did as a younger person. So I used to sew, not very well, but I did used to sew when I was a teenager, and I was in a position now where, I've got a little bit more time, I can start doing that. And I took some sewing lessons and dug out the old sewing machine that I'd inherited from my grandmother and really enjoyed picking up that creative side of my life again. You'll probably find, though, with the hobbies that you've done in the past, things have changed in the intervening years. Things are a bit more not up to date now, but perhaps techniques have changed. Any equipment that you need has improved. It's more readily available. And that can add a little bit of excitement to the hobby that you used to do as a child. It brings a new dimension to it, and it can bring a fun challenge and make you feel like you're stretching yourself a little bit, but in a fun way. So, for example, you might discover you used to knit or you sewed, and perhaps you're discovering that you really still enjoy scrapbooking or quilting. Perhaps you used to dance, and so you want to take up tap dancing again, something like that. It may be you played sport competitively whilst at school or at university, and that's something you want to resume. You might even decide to do it seriously and so join a local league for your age group. But if you're like me, it's writing. Writing really was that love that I had as a very young person, as a child. They say that whatever it was you loved doing at the age of 8, that's your true calling. And that certainly was my love at that age. I loved reading. I loved making up stories. And maybe that was your passion too. You made up little stories, you illustrated them, sellotaped them together, made your mum read them. And so you can go back to that. Fiction writing might be just what you need in your life right now. That's the old flame, the old love that needs to be rekindled. So as the kids get older and you start to have more free time, what do you want to do with that time? As I said before, make sure it's something for you. It's not about the kids or the home or your spouse. It's something for you. If you had some time free, what would you do with it? So becoming a stay-at-home mum, stay-at-home parent, you've made the transition from the corporate life into the domestic life. But when you put the results of, those old loves that you once had, the fact that you've made that transition out of the rat race, that you've got a bit of time for reflection, and you've been learning all these new skills. When you put all those things together, what that's really pulling together is a personal transition, an inner transition. It's not just about the routines that you have in your day-to-day life. It's actually about a shift that's deeper within you. You're able to kind of readjust the way that you're viewing your whole life, and that includes your personal growth. For example, in the 9 years since I became a parent, my own personal growth has gone beyond anything I ever could have imagined. Finally published the books that I always wanted to publish. Oh my goodness, never ever thought I'd have the ability and the patience and the persistence to do that. And here I am doing a podcast. Well, who would ever have thought that? Not me. So I've gone through a lot of personal growth in these last 9 years. I know it will be the same for you. So not only will you leave the rat race, but you'll go through this growth and you're going to realize that you're capable of so much more than you ever once thought possible. And you might even have this added impetus that you want to be a positive example for your children. Certainly for my 2 girls, I want them to know that they can do whatever they want in life. I want them to know they don't have to take the traditional route of going to university and getting a qualification, but they can do whatever takes their fancy. What are other things that I've stopped? So more recently, my growth has been that I've stopped drinking alcohol. I've stopped eating sugar, which has made my body feel better. I've stopped burning the candle at both ends, which I did as a young person and of course forced to do when the kids are little. Having sleep again makes me feel great. It makes me feel energized. And when I combine that with the no alcohol or sugar, I feel so much better than I probably even did in my 20s. Now, those are quite extreme things I've gone to, and that's not for everybody. Your personal transition is going to look very different from mine, but undoubtedly the way you see yourself has changed, and I'm sure has changed for the better, that you've surprised yourself in so many positive ways. So I would say embrace that change. Really think about what it is that you want for the second half of your life. So as I mentioned, for me, it was to publish my novels. That was one of the things I desperately wanted. And they say that truth is wasted on the young. And I realise this now, and that has made me really focus on what's important. So after my family, after kids being safe and well and happy, the most important thing for me is my writing. And so what's yours? I ask you, what's the most important thing for you? And give yourself time to make those changes in your life, so you're finding what really does, and try a few different things, because not everything is going to light you up in the way that you thought that it would. So try out some different things and find out what makes you happy. When you find what makes you happy, it's really going to boost your confidence. It's going to make you feel good, and it's going to want to make you do that thing even more. So I found that the more I wrote, the better I felt, the more my confidence grew, the happier I was. And so the more I wrote, the more my confidence grew, the more happy I was, and so on and so forth. It became this wonderful upward spiral. So if that's you, if you want this, if you want to see your story finished, you want to see your books published, maybe you even want to make a bit of an income from it, this could be the opportunity that you want to grab with both hands. So as I say, if you're a stay-at-home mum, now is the time to start thinking about what you want to do as the kids get older. You give so much of yourself to your kids every day. Find that little something for you. Find that little corner of pleasure that's just for you. Because not only is it good for you, but I also believe very strongly that the happier you are as a mum, then the happier your children will be. And the happier your children are, the happier you are. And it's, again, this lovely virtuous circle. So if writing a book is what is going to make you happy, find a way to make it happen. Do it for you, because you deserve it. Schedule in a little bit of time over the next week where you can either read books about writing, listen to some podcasts about writing, take part in a short writing course, or even just get stuck in, get writing your very own novel. Whatever lights you up, try it. You won't regret it. All right, I hope that has been some sort of inspiration for you. I hope if you're a stay-at-home mum, or even in any sort of period of transition in your life, use that as a catalyst for something positive. It does take time, but start thinking about it. Kind of remember what you enjoyed when you were a child, what's going to light you up, what's going to make you feel good. What are the small steps you could start today that will give you a taste for it, that will make you know whether this is the right move for you. So I wish you luck in whatever your transition is. Keep with it. Let me know. I'd love to hear what you've always wanted to do. I'm hoping you're like me and you've always wanted to write a book, and you're going to use this time as the transition to start whether it be children's illustrated book, a children's novel, an epic fantasy, a murder mystery, whatever it is. I hope that you pursue it, and please do let me know how it goes. All right, take care for now, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye! Well, that's it for this week. I hope you found it useful. If you're interested in becoming a part of a safe and friendly community of like-minded writers who want to write their first novel, go to my Facebook group at emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers. I can't wait to see you in there. You can find the show notes for this episode and all the others at emmadesi.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining me, and I can't wait to get to know you better soon.